What a week we have in college football, and we got to break it down. But before we do that, please go ahead, hit that like and subscribe button. Let me know what you guys are thinking about in terms of week 8 for college football. Additionally, if you guys are listening to this on Apple, Google, or Spotify, please go ahead, give me 5 stars, leave me a review. And if you're watching on YouTube and you listen to your podcast over there, go ahead, head over there, find me, follow me, give me the 5 stars and a review. Really helps me out, helps me continue to bring you guys great content. We got a lot of good stuff on the way. Okay, so this week is, I think, going to be one of my favorite weeks in college football. We've got games up and down the board that are quite honestly going to mean a lot. And here's what I mean by that. There's several undefeated teams this week that could come out of this season no longer undefeated, right? They can no longer come out of this week undefeated. And there's not very many teams left in the country that are undefeated. You have number 2 Ohio State, you have Tennessee, you have Syracuse, you have Clemson, you have UCLA, you have Ole Miss, and then you have, I think that's it. No, you have TCU. And quite frankly, we could walk out of this week. Now, this chance is very, very low, but we could walk out of this week with only one undefeated team, and that would be coming out of the ACC. So this week really intrigues me. Well, okay, you're going to have Georgia too, so don't let me forget Georgia. Georgia's on a bye this week. So you could have 2 undefeated teams by the end of this week. That's really unlikely that is going to happen, but the possibility is there. And with how the season has gone for college football, I would say anything is possible. So let's go ahead and jump into the game in my conference, probably the biggest game in my conference, Oklahoma State versus Texas. Texas currently is favored by -6 on this one, and I'm not sure how I feel about this one because as an OU fan, it's like, who do I want to win, right? Do I want Texas to win or do I want Oklahoma State to win? It's usually, whatever benefits you the most, but if you're Oklahoma and you're sitting at 3 losses, yeah, you can still potentially make the Big 12 championship game. It's not likely, though. Very unlikely. Your chances are slim to none. Got to have a lot of people lose, and then you've got to go and win out. Which, the winning out part's not hard. It's just requiring everybody else to lose a specific amount of games and everybody losing the right games. So, the biggest question here in this game is Texas real, right? Or are they fooling us? Because so many times in the past has Texas looked good, and then they've came up short later on. And so, I think this week is going to really tell us a lot because if Spencer Sanders is playing for Oklahoma State, this is going to be an extremely tough test for the Texas defense. Outside of Alabama, this might be one of their biggest tests of the season up to this point. This game's on the road, and you would expect this, again, to be a tough matchup. I do think that Ewers, though, at quarterback for Texas makes them really good and, in turn, gives them a great shot. If Ewers plays the whole season, there is a small chance that Texas only has 1 loss. I say that because there is a specific game, I'm not going to play hypotheticals here, that they lost, and he didn't play the whole game. Now, that team could have potentially made the coverages and everything different, and their offense could have looked differently as well that game. Adjustments can be made. So that's why you can't play the hypotheticals here. And then the other game they lost, their defense just played bad. So I can't make the argument there that everything would have been better because, hey, your defense still played bad that game. So even if Ewers was out there, your defense would have still had to walk out onto the field. The question of this game is, will Spencer Sanders play? I think that's the question everybody's asking here, right? If Spencer Sanders plays, OSU's got a real shot. If he doesn't play, then like Dylan Gabriel for OU, he is everything for Oklahoma State. And if he cannot go, you don't expect Oklahoma State to be able to do much on the offensive side of the ball. For OSU, it's extremely important for them to get to Ewers like Alabama did, make him uncomfortable, and make him make mistakes. Ultimately, if Spencer Sanders doesn't play, I'm going to take Texas to win this game. I'm probably going to take them to win by 14 or 17 points. Now, if Spencer Sanders plays, I think this is a completely different game, and I think Oklahoma State wins by 1 score. Okay. TCU versus Kansas State. So TCU is currently favored by -3.5. But before we get into this game, if you have made it this far and you have not liked or subscribed, we're going to take a moment for you to hit a like and subscribe while I take a drink of water. Okay, and we're back. Okay, so TCU is favored by -3.5 for this game, and I'm not sure why the line for this game favors TCU so much. This is a TCU team that reminds me a lot of what some of the previous OU teams have been like, where they're explosive on offense, but they're kind of bad on defense. And if you look at this game, I think it's pretty simple of what this game comes down to. Can Kansas State control the ball through their running game like they are historically able to do, like they have been able to do for Oklahoma? Many times over the past couple of years, Kansas State has got a win over Oklahoma because they go out there, they keep our defense on the field, and they'll go first, second, third down. And if it gets to a fourth and short, they're going for it. And it's a genius strategy when you're going up against an explosive offense like this, and your defense can't get the other offense off the field, right? And I think TCU is going to struggle to get Kansas State off the field. Here's the deal. I called Kansas State to be really good this year. I expected them to potentially be in the college football playoffs as a dark horse if they could go out and win this conference this year. So far, they're 5-1, 3-0 in this conference. They did lose to Tulane, but if a lot of people lose and you got a bunch of one-loss teams, I think Kansas is sitting pretty right there. Now, I know a bunch of you guys might jump on me on that, but listen, it's just the fact, right? And Kansas State has a pretty good defense, and I think they're going to be able to do it. The question is, what is it going to look like for them being able to stop an explosive Kansas State running game? You've got Deuce Vaughn. Well, okay, I'm sorry, TCU game, right? TCU's offense is explosive, averaging about 45.8 points per game. And they're pretty close to what Ohio State is on the offensive side of the ball. They don't have the weapons that Ohio State has, but they're pretty close. If you're TCU, the concern is, can you stop Deuce Vaughn and Adrian Martinez? Deuce Vaughn is maybe one of the best running backs in the country. You're going to see him playing on Sundays. And, you're going to have to get your defense off the field. We've said that. That's the problem that Oklahoma's had with Kansas for such the longest time. And I think that's the problem they're going to have here. You're allowing a little bit over 400 yards a game. Your rush yards, you're only allowing 135. Kansas State's going to make you work for every bit of those 135 yards allowed. And you're probably going to end up allowing over 200. And I think if Kansas State can force TCU and their offense to stay off the field, like they do with Oklahoma, and they can get it to about that 200 mark in the rushing, maybe a little bit over, got K-State winning this game by 3. Okay, the next game up that I want to look at is Iowa versus Ohio State. So Ohio State is currently favored by 30 in Columbus, and you've got to be asking yourself, does Iowa have a shot, or are we just hyping this up because of Iowa's defense? So Iowa is one of the best defensive teams this year in college football, which has been their identity for years. And they will remain relevant in the Big Ten Conference, which the defense that they've been playing has made them relevant in the Big Ten. That for a conference that's primarily been ran by Ohio State. Last year, Michigan wins it. Penn State every once in a while contends, but the conference has primarily been ran by one team, Ohio State. Iowa is always in the mix there, though, because of their defense, because of what it provides. Now, the question is, can Iowa ever get an offense, right? As long as I've remembered, Iowa State's offense, or Iowa is, I don't know why I keep saying Ohio State or Iowa State. Iowa's offense is incredibly terrible. Incredibly terrible. As long as I can remember. If they could just get a quarterback back there that was serviceable, and they could get an offensive play scheme that could go out there and score the ball like a Kansas State team, oh, you're talking a tremendous team. You're talking tremendous. And yeah, I mean, they're right there. They're right there with them. So Ohio State, I think, is one of the best offenses in the country, with C.J. Stroud pretty much being the Heisman front runner. But you're missing one of your top 3 wide receivers in the country in Jackson Smith and Jigba. Now, remember, this Ohio State team lost 2 wide receivers in the first round to the NFL last year. So they lost a lot of production last year, especially at the wide receiver position. But you have other guys on this team like Emeka Egbuka, who was a 5-star wide receiver that everybody wanted, right? Everybody wanted Emeka Egbuka. You have Marvin Harrison. Those are your top 2 wide receivers this year. And then you have Julian Fleming right below him. All 3 of those guys are ballers for you, and any day can go off. And when Jackson Smith and Jigba comes back, you really have to ask yourself, what is this Ohio State wide receiver core going to look like? Because it's extremely hard to defend the 3 guys that they have now. Imagine what it's going to look like when they have 4. Here's the thing, though. If you try to shut down their receivers, then they got a tight end in Cade Stover who's going to just torch you. Now, the other thing is Ohio State is not a one-dimensional team. They have 2 running backs in Trayvon Henderson and Mayan Williams. These dudes are studs, averaging, I think this year they've got over 420 yards in total rushing yards, and they can find the end zone pretty much whenever they want to. But at the end of the day, this is a really big test for Ohio State, right? And their offense. We're going to get to see what their offense is. They're going up against the 7th total defense, a team that's 3rd in passing defense, 3rd in scoring defense, and a team that is number 1 in not giving up explosive plays, meaning they don't give up those plays. Now, Iowa's defense is great, but the question is can Ohio State's defense go out there and be competent and stop an Iowa team from going out there and scoring points, right? We've seen that this Ohio State team looks really good. I want to see, though, can this Ohio State defense go out there and be dominant and keep this Iowa team under 10 points or completely be a shutout? I think if they can do that, they're going to make a statement, and teams are going to be looking at Ohio State completely differently as the season goes along. Okay, let's look at the game day game of the week. Number 10 Oregon versus UCLA. So Oregon got completely manhandled, skull drug through the mud by Georgia early in the season. UCLA played South Alabama pretty close early in the season. And a lot of us were looking at UCLA and going, they're not doing much. Well, UCLA is currently sitting at 6-0, and Oregon is currently sitting at 5-1. Both are undefeated in the Pac-12. And I believe they're the only 2 undefeated Pac-12 teams left. The over-under for this game is 70.5. So Vegas is telling you they're going to score points. And then they got Oregon favored to win by 6.5. Now, why is this? Is it because they've got, some people call him Big Game Bo, but is it because they got Bo Nix? I'm not sure. But the key is simple for Oregon, right? Can Bo Nix continue to play well and not turn the ball over? That's the real question here. Bo Nix is 131 of 186 for 1,526 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. So if Bo Nix can get to the point where he's not turning the ball over, yeah, this Oregon team's got a really good shot. Because this Oregon team, in terms of an offensive production, they're putting up 512 yards a game, averaging about 42 points per game. So you look at what this Oregon team's doing on the offensive side of the ball, and it's impressive. But the question is, have they played anybody? So, they beat Eastern Washington after they lost to Georgia 49-3, 70-14. But you beat BYU 41-20, and then you barely beat Washington State 44-41, and then you beat Stanford 45-27, and Arizona 49-22. Not completely sold on Oregon just yet. But this UCLA, they're different. They're a different breed. Completely different. UCLA is averaging over 505 yards a game, and they're really balanced. 294 yards passing, 211 yards of rushing. They're only allowing 344 yards on the opposite side of the ball, which I think is pretty impressive, especially after what we saw early this season with UCLA. And after that South Alabama game, it looks like they were able to recompose themselves and get together. They pretty much dominated everybody that they played early in the season. They dominated Colorado, which you would expect. And then they beat a very good Washington team with Michael Penix Jr. And then they beat Utah. Luckily, that game was at home at the Rose Bowl, 42-32. And so now they have their next tough test in Eugene. And if they can get through that, if you can beat Oregon, or not beat Oregon, beat USC, and then win the Pac-12 championship, you're right in this thing to go to the college football playoffs. And I think they have the best shot as a team that's never been there. Now, here's the deal. If you look at the two quarterbacks in this game, their stats look very similar. But I'm going to have to give the advantage to the explosive offense and Brian Kelly. And I really like their quarterback. I really like what UCLA's quarterback, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, does. The question is, are they going to be able to stop him from running the ball, right? If Oregon can stop Thompson-Robinson from running the ball and just keep him to a one-dimensional passing game, then all you have to worry about is Charbonnet, who is a pretty damn good running back. Should have went to the league last year. Looked like he got hung out to dry by Caleb Williams, if that's really the case. But I've got UCLA winning this game outright. I've got them winning by 14 points at least. I just think UCLA's offense is really good. I think they've got a lot of experience. I think it's going to be too much for the Oregon Ducks to handle. Okay, we're going to take another moment while I get a drink of water. But if you haven't already, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Remember, helps me bring you guys great content. Helps me get guys on the podcast, more stuff out there for you. Okay, so Clemson and Syracuse. I'm excited for this game because nobody expected Syracuse to be what they are this year. Nobody. Now, this is a home game for Clemson, so it's going to be a tough battle for Syracuse, right? Death Valley is not an easy place to play. Clemson's currently favored by 14. They only have the line, though, set on this one at 49.5. But Syracuse quarterback, he's playing like a boss this year. He's 106 of 152, 1,434 yards, 12 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. That's almost the same thing as what the other guy over at Oregon's doing that everybody loves, in Bo Nix. However, we don't need to spend too much time on this game. I still think Clemson's going to be too much to handle for the up-and-coming Syracuse team. DJ Uiagalelei is playing really well this season. I think Clemson fans have hopefully finally settled down about him. He's got 1,665 yards on the season, 17 touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. Now, he has been sacked 11 times this season. I would like to see the offensive line protect him a little bit better. But he's got several weapons in Will Shipley, Antonio Williams, Box Collins. I mean, he's got guys all up and down the board that he can get the ball to. I think this is probably a 14 or 21 point win for Clemson. Actually, I think the over is what you would want to take in this game. I do think Syracuse scores a little bit, but I think Clemson wins by 14 or 21, whatever that looks like for them. Okay, one of the other games I really want to look at, our second to last game that I want to look at today, Tennessee and UT Martin. So this game is in Knoxville, and I'm not by any means saying that Tennessee's not going to win this game. Tennessee's going to win this game. But I think this is going to be interesting to watch to see how Tennessee responds after an extremely emotional win against Alabama. There's a really good chance that at the end of the first quarter, this game is 7-0. There's a really good chance that's the score. But ultimately, Hendon Hooker and this Tennessee offense, they're going to pick it back up, and they're going to keep rolling. I think they don't even have a line for this game on ESPN, so we're not even going to look at that. I will say this, though. If Tennessee is able to win this game and go to 7-0, here's what their schedule looks like. Next week, you have Kentucky at home. I expect you to be able to win that game after beating Alabama. After that, you move to 8-0. Then you have to go to Athens. You have to play Georgia at Georgia. If you can win that game and you move to 9-0, I mean, as it sits right now, they can control their own destiny. But it's going to be really hard to leave a Tennessee team even with one loss at that point out of the playoffs. Because their next 3 games after Georgia are Missouri, at South Carolina, and at Vanderbilt. Those are 3 extremely easy wins for Tennessee. They should be able to win all 3 of those games with ease. So, Tennessee Volunteers, it is in your hands to make the college football playoffs. No one else is stopping you from getting there except yourselves. Don't go screw this up. Don't screw it up. Okay. One of the next games that I want to look at is Ole Miss and LSU. And this is the last game we're going to look at today. It's also one of the last undefeated teams that are playing. Currently, right now, LSU is favored by -1.5. Now, I don't know why LSU has been favored in a lot of the games that they've been favored in this year. I think LSU's good, but I don't think they're as good as everybody's making them out to be. Now, Tiger Stadium's an extremely hard place to play, so they are getting the advantage of home field advantage there. That's what Vegas is giving them. Vegas is giving them that advantage. The question is, are you going to be able to stop Jackson Dart? Because Jackson Dart has been, I would say, decent for Ole Miss this year. He's thrown 100 out of 162, 1,488 yards. He has thrown 11 touchdowns, but has thrown 6 picks. Jaden Daniels, on the other hand, has thrown for 1,564 yards, 10 touchdowns, and only 1 interception. The difference is Ole Miss has a really explosive offense and an extremely balanced offense. They have 231 yards of passing average, 271 on the rushing. They're only allowing 346 a game. The question is Zach Evans going to be a difference maker for Ole Miss? We know about Quinton Judkins, who is their best running back right now. He's easily their best running back. The question is, though, are they going to be able to go out there and dominate the running game? You have Zach Evans out there. He is currently sitting at 605 yards this year. Over 100 attempts, 7 touchdowns. Their running game's pretty deep. If you're LSU and you can stop their running game, you've got an extremely good shot here. But if you're Ole Miss, you have to be able to get that running game going. Because if you can get that running game going, it's going to open up a lot more for Jackson Dart, and you're just going to be able to light up this LSU defense. Now, this LSU team is improving, and they're just getting better as the season is going on. The question is, can Brian Kelly go get that big SEC win? This is it. This is the big SEC win you're looking for. You're playing a 7-0 Ole Miss, an Ole Miss team that is right now sitting number 1 in the West and definitely can contend to go play for an SEC championship game over Alabama. This is it for Brian Kelly. This is what you got to look at. Okay, my Oklahoma Sooners, they're not playing this week. They are signing plenty of autographs, though. You got a couple guys that are going to be at a Ford dealership in Norman, and then you've got a couple guys that are going to be in Mathis Brothers. So, OU fans, go out there, see your Oklahoma football players this week. Go out there and support them. Sit down, watch some college football, take a week off from all the stressful things that have happened this season. And until next week, we will see you guys next time.